Level 1. The tender with dry hands. You wake up before sunrise and taste yesterday's coffee in the back of your throat. The dock smells like diesel, hot metal, and low tide. 3 notes that never leave you, even on your days off. Your job is simple on paper. You are the hands that dress other men for the water. You shoulder umbilicals that feel like wet pythons, coil comms cables. Check fittings until your knuckles go white, and pretend you don't notice how every checklist is really a prayer. You work 12 hours, sometimes 14, because weather window is a religion out here. The diver's helmet sits in your lap, like a skull you're polishing for a ceremony. You learn the phrase everybody says like a joke because it isn't one. On at the back, off at the hat. Bailout bottle open, bailout valve closed. So nobody quietly drains the only option left. When someone throws up in a full-face mask, you're the one who rinses it out and hands it back as if nothing happened. You learn how to look calm while holding evidence of panic. The surprising fact is that the first failure is often not equipment. It's communication. Voice is swallowed by bubbles, static, and ego until whole operation is reduced to rope signals like it's 1910, and you're paying out a lifeline into black water. You tell yourself it's temporary, that you'll be the one in a hat soon, that the ocean will finally respect you. Then you watch the diver step off the stage and vanish, and you realize the sea doesn't need to respect you to keep you. Level 2, the Inshore Hardhat diver. Your first ascent is not heroic. It's awkward. The helmet clamps your jaw, your own breathing sounds too loud, and the surface air tastes like rubber hose and compressor oil you pretend not to notice. There's no cinematic blue, just green-brown soup and silt that turns your light into a weak, trembling cone. You feel the umbilical tug like a parent's hand on a leash, and it comforts you until it doesn't. You work where the public never looks. Bridges, intake pipes, marina pilings, flooded gates. You learn that bottom time isn't about sightseeing. It's about how long your fingers keep working after cold starts to rewrite your thoughts. The water presses into every seam. Your gloves fill with sweat, then chill, then go numb. The ironic fact is that even with all the hardware, the oldest emergency skill still matters. Clearing a flooded helmet, purging, forcing water out before your next inhale becomes a decision you don't get to take back. You practice it until it's muscle memory, because fear is faster than logic. Your first moral compromise is small enough to fit in a logbook. A supervisor asks if you felt anything weird after a fast move up the line. Tingle, joint ache, dizziness. You feel it. You also feel the weight of being the new guy. You say you're fine. You learn the industry's real currency, silence that keeps the schedule alive. And the schedule, you're told, is what keeps everyone employed, right up until it kills someone efficiently. Level 3, the offshore air diver. Offshore introduces you to distance, miles from land, wind that never stops, and the constant mechanical heartbeat of a vessel holding position over empty water. You sleep in a bunk that vibrates like a trapped phone, eat food that tastes faintly of freezer and fatigue, and wake to alarms you don't remember learning. You stop thinking of the ocean as scenery. It becomes a work site that wants your tools, your time, and your attention span. Your world shrinks into a few square meters of deck and a few more under it. The surface crew speaks in codes because the ship does. Dynamic positioning statuses, green, amber, red, like traffic lights for whether you get to live with options or die with procedure. On amber, you return to safety immediately. On red, you return without debating it, because the boat can drift, the bell can swing, and a human body is not engineered for becoming a pendulum. The surprising fact is that redundancy is real and still not comforting. Everything has a backup: gas, comms, winches, power. But backups still assume time, and underwater time is not minutes. It's breaths. Your compromise arrives wearing professionalism. You watch a minor near miss get described as a learning point. You sign a statement that reads clean. You feel the dirty version in your ribs for hours afterward. You start to understand that offshore doesn't hide danger. It edits it. Level 4, the bell bounce diver, transfer under pressure. Now you meet the bell, not the romantic brass artifact from history books, but cramped, industrial capsule that smells like metal, damp neoprene, and the last crew's sweat baked into paint. You ride it down with another diver close enough that you can hear his breathing pattern change when he thinks you can't. The descent is a physics lesson you take with your organs. Pressure makes everything feel denser. The air, your thoughts, the silence between comms checks. You lock out to work, then lock back in to return to the surface still under pressure. Because drowning isn't the only way the sea takes people. Sometimes it waits until they rush the last part, the transition from water to chamber. The ironic fact is brutally procedural. If you do surface decompression, the standard expects you to get into the chamber and be recompressed within 5 minutes, or the risk jumps enough that the plan itself changes. Penalties, extra time, extra exposure, extra chances for your body to prove it's not a machine. Your psychological tension is not underwater. It's in the sprint across deck. Stripping gear with shaking hands while a timer exists in everyone's mind but nobody says out loud. You feel your life reduced to whether a hatch, a seal, and a crew's coordination behave like they're supposed to. And you learn the bell's darkest trick. It makes the surface feel farther away than the seafloor. Level 5, the mixed gas diver, where your hands start to shake. You stop breathing air because air stops being forgiving. Helium-oxygen mixtures become normal, and normal becomes alien fast. Helium makes your voice sound thin and unreal. Without a voice descrambler, you sound like a cartoon character trying to report an emergency. The first time you hear yourself like that, you laugh. Once, because your brain needs 1 second of relief before it goes back to work. Below roughly 500 feet, 150 meters, your nervous system begins to negotiate with pressure in ways you can't bully into submission. High-pressure nervous syndrome isn't a legend. It's tremors, nausea, dizziness, degraded performance. Your body quietly disagrees with your ambition. The tremor can sit in an 8 to 12 hertz band, a clinical detail that feels obscene when it's your own fingers vibrating around a tool you can't drop. The surprising fact is that one method of mitigation is adding a small amount of nitrogen to the helium mix, using a narcotic effect as medicine, like prescribing intoxication to stabilize a man doing precision work in the dark. Your compromise is intimate. You feel the first tremor, and you don't report it right away. You wait to see if it settles. You tell yourself you're being rational. But wait and see. Underwater is just a polite phrase for gamble with the only body you get. You finish the job anyway, and you surface with hands that still remember shaking, like they're rehearsing for the next depth. Level 6, the saturation diver, living at work depth. You enter the chamber, and time changes flavor. The hatch seals, the steel walls sweat, and the air grows hot because helium steals heat from you with every exhale. Inside, the temperature sits in the 85 to 93 degrees Fahrenheit range. Not for comfort, but because hypothermia becomes easy when your breathing gas strips warmth like a tax. You eat food sent through a small airlock, soft, salty, practical. Everything tastes slightly flatter, like pressure compresses a menu too. You saturate. Your tissues reach equilibrium, so decompression time stops increasing. That's the trick the entire system is built on. Once you're saturated, whether you stay 1 day or 15, the final decompression is the same. So the business decision is obvious. Keep you down there and get the work. Most operations cap it at 28 days seal to seal. Your world becomes a month-long shift where privacy is a myth and the toilet is a piece of life support equipment people actually monitor. A typical rhythm is clinical. 8 hours of diving and bell runs, 16 hours of rest and sleep in the living quarters. The bell mates of the chamber, pressure equalizes, and you transfer under pressure like a human package that can't be unwrapped without consequences. The surprising fact is numerical and cold. Decompression is often roughly 1 day per 100 feet of seawater plus a day. At 650 feet, that's about 8 days of decompression. 8 days of waiting to become surface human again. Your compromise is existential. You start calling it the chamber instead of the box because language matters and you need the illusion of dignity. Then you fall asleep to the hiss of gas and wake up realizing the chamber is not a room. It's a decision that keeps making itself. Level 7. The Bellman, the one who never leaves the hatch. Now you spend your shift inside the bell while the other diver locks out. You become the tender in miniature, managing the excursion umbilical, keeping slack from becoming a noose, keeping tension from becoming a trap. The bell is cramped enough that every movement feels like negotiation. Your gloves are always damp. Your ears always notice pressure changes before your brain admits them. The surprising fact is that bell procedures still rely on primitive backups. In the worst communication failures, bubbles and light flashes can become a language between the bell and the surface. It's absurd until it saves someone. Your psychological tension is listening. You hear breathing rates rise. You hear a pause after a sentence that should be immediate. You hear the tiny distortions that mean fear is now part of the gas mix. You watch gauges. You work the bell panel. You prepare to switch from surface supply to onboard gas if the surface feed fails or contaminates. Because wrong mix isn't a paperwork problem down here. It's a time bomb with a polite label. Your compromise is loyalty. The diver outside asks for 2 more minutes to finish a task. 2 minutes is nothing on land. 2 minutes underwater could be the start of a cascade. Fatigue, cold, tremor, mistakes. You say yes more often than you should because you know what it feels like to be that diver and you want to be the kind of bellman you wish you had. Then you hear the surface call a DP status change, and 2 minutes becomes a moral debt you have to pay immediately. Level 8. The diver medical tech, suturing in a steel closet. In saturation, you don't get ambulances. You get each other. That's why you train beyond diving, because isolation isn't poetic out here. It's medical reality. You learn to insert 4 catheters, suture wounds, and handle life-threatening conditions like tension pneumothorax that may require pleurocentesis. Procedures that feel insane until you remember the alternative is dying where no one can reach you. The surprising fact is how quickly the chamber turns into a clinic. One moment you're eating rehydrated eggs. The next you're holding pressure on a cut that won't stop bleeding because everything, humidity, heat, constant exposure, keeps small infections alive. Skin rashes and ear infections become routine enough that guys joke about them, which is how humans cope with living inside a controlled atmosphere that still manages to grow problems. Your psychological tension is consent. A teammate sits in front of you, pale under artificial light, trying to look tough because toughness is the only currency he has left. He wants you to fix him without reporting it topside, because reported problems can end contracts, and ended contracts end careers. You see the fear behind his request. Not fear pain, fear being sent home as unsafe. Your compromise is choosing what becomes official. You treat what you can, document what you must, and carry the rest in your own memory like contraband. You start to realize the dark secret isn't that the ocean is dangerous. It's that the system survives by turning health into a negotiable variable. Level 9, the life support tech, SAC control. You stop being a diver and become the person who keeps divers alive while they sleep. Your control station is quiet in a way the ocean never is. Screens, logs, gas readings, temperatures, humidity, numbers that decide whether someone wakes up with a headache or never wakes up at all. You monitor the chamber's temperature, gas content, and even the toilet system that dumps outside, because nothing human is separate from life support when humans live inside pressure. The surprising fact is how conservative the chamber atmosphere must be over long exposure. Oxygen partial pressure in storage is kept around a long-term tolerable level, about 0.4 bar, because too much oxygen over time is its own kind of poison, and at the end of decompression, oxygen fraction also stays limited because fire in a sealed habitat is not an emergency. It's a verdict. Your psychological tension is hearing divers talk about the outside world like it's a rumor. Birthdays pass. Relationships fray through bad satellite calls. Someone laughs too hard at nothing. Someone else goes quiet for hours. You learn that pressure compresses mood the way it compresses gas, making small emotions denser, heavier, harder to move around. Your compromise is detachment. You cannot afford to feel every fear you help contain, or you become useless. So you become professional. And professionalism, in SAC control, sometimes looks exactly like coldness. Then a diver's voice comes through the scrambler at 3 a.m., not joking anymore, and you remember every number you watch has a name attached. Level 10, the diving supervisor, the person who orders the sea. You sit at the control point because the supervisor is the one who can best monitor the diver's status, the operation's progress, the gas panel, and communications. Because responsibility, legally and practically, belongs to you now. You don't get to be in the water. You don't get the simple honesty of fear. You get decisions. You carry the safety-critical role in plain language. You are responsible for all aspects of the diving operations you supervise, and the certification track itself says it without romance. Air Supervisor Exam, then Bell Supervisor Exam, because the system needs you to be tested before it trusts you with men under pressure. The surprising fact is how little power you actually have when the machine starts moving. The client wants progress. The weather wants speed. Fatigue wants shortcuts. Every risk assessment looks perfect until it meets real sea state and real human pride. You listen to a diver's scrambled voice describe a problem in fragments, static, helium distortion, stress, and you decide where to recall him now or let him finish the task that keeps the vessel on schedule. Your moral compromise is the signature. You authorize the start dives. You recall divers when circumstances warrant. You record the details. You become the person who can stop everything, and the person who learns how expensive stopping is. The devastating irony is this. At the top rank, you are the most trapped. The divers can at least point to the ocean as the enemy. Your enemy has a friendlier face. Contracts, timelines, stakeholder calls, the quiet pressure to make risk look manageable so the work keeps existing. You stare at a live feed of man in darkness and realize your job is not keeping him safe. Your job is to keep the operation defensible. And when you finally go home, your bed is dry, your hands are clean, and you lie awake anyway, because you still hear the hiss of gas in a room that isn't there. Somewhere back on the deck, a level 1 tender coils an umbilical that still holds the ocean smell in its rubber. He wipes a helmet clean until it shines, like polishing a future. He watches the bell disappear below the surface and tells himself this is a ladder. 10 levels, upward, earned. Down in SAC control, your logs fill with perfect numbers. Up on deck, his gloves stay dry, and the sea waits patiently between you because it knows the darkest secret of the whole ranking system. The deeper you go, the less anyone can prove what really happened.